The Battle of Crimea consolidates the superiority of the German-Romanian troops. The coastal fortifications of the city of Kerch are attacked, and the Soviet ships evacuating troops from Sevastopol are bombed. In the center, the Russian army, supported by tanks, launches a fierce counterattack after bombarding the enemy positions with artillery fire. The Germans manage to stop it. In Rostenburg, Hitler holds a meeting with Grand Admiral Erich Raeder, Supreme Chief of the Kriegsmarine, who had staunchly opposed the invasion of Russia. The Führer, fearful of aggravating the Americans, orders him that both German ships and submarines should try to avoid clashes with U.S. vessels. On the other hand, President Roosevelt, after the amending the Neutrality Acts, announces that the American freighters sailing to Great Britain are being armed to defend themselves from the attacks of the Axis submarines. In addition, he presses the Finnish government to sign a peace treaty with the Russians. In North Africa, RAF aircraft bomb Benghazi and Derna in Libya. In East Africa, the British troops have encircled Gondar, which after the fall of Addis Ababa is the last position where the Italians are still resisting. In the naval war, the British aircraft carrier Ark Royal is sunk by the Alboran Sea near Gibraltar by the submarine U-81, captured by Commander Guggenberger. The escort ships drop more than 130 depth charges, but the German submarine is able to escape. The forces of Army Group Center, which have diminished after the high number of casualties incurred due to the freezing temperatures and the faulty weaponry, prepare themselves for a second assault against Moscow. Meanwhile, soldiers coming from Siberia and groups of partisans continue to gather around the Russian capital. General Zhukov launches several preemptive attacks against the Germans with troops dressed with winter clothing, flanked by T-34 tanks and equipped with Kayushka rocket launchers. The Russian tanks terrorize the Wehrmacht soldiers, but the German aviation responds by bombing the different defense lines and the railways and airdromes of the Moscow area. In the London press, Winston Churchill publishes an article in which, among other things, he affirms that no one is suffering more than the Jews, the evils brought by Hitler and his sickening regime, which repudiates human beings. American Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox, after the amendment of the Neutrality Acts is passed, declares that the decision has been taken to carry out aerial and naval patrols that will support the escort force protecting the convoys sailing across the Atlantic towards British ports. Furthermore, bases will be set up in different countries, including the United Kingdom. In China, the American forces abandoned Shanghai, Peiping, Beijing, and Tianjin, Tianjin. The Germans attempt once again to take Moscow. 3 panzer groups in charge of Generals Heinz Guderian, Hans-Georg Reinhardt, and Erich Hoppner, along with 3 infantry corps, undertake the second part of Operation Typhoon. Among the population of Leningrad, hunger is rampant and is provoking thousands of deaths. The Soviet army is forced to withdraw from its Volkhov River positions. In the south, the German-Romanian forces are fiercely fighting the Russians and are pushing them back to the Crimean Peninsula. Up to date, the Germans have managed to take more than 3 million Russian prisoners. SS General Richard Gluck's concentration camp inspector sends a memorandum to all the compounds following Himmler's instructions, ordering them not to execute the Russian prisoners who remain in good physical conditions to use them as slave labor. The First Lord of the British Admiralty, Alexander Count of Hillsborough, delivers a speech at Liverpool in which he states that "We will avenge the loss of the Ark Royal as we did with the Hood. RAF aircraft bombed Catania in Sicily and Brindisi, southeast of the Italian peninsula. In Tokyo, the Secret Services receive a constant information inflow from the Japanese consul in Hawaii regarding the movements of the American fleet of Pearl Harbor, centering especially on battleships and aircraft carriers. The British colony of Hong Kong is reinforced by the arrival of Canadian soldiers. All across the Russian front, extreme weather conditions prevail, but despite the climate, the Germans continue to ram the Russian defensive positions in the Moscow theater. In the south, the German armored forces have occupied most of the Crimean Peninsula and captured more than 100,000 Soviet soldiers. After the taking of the city of Kerch, the siege of Sevastopol continues. In Berlin, Minister Joseph Goebbels writes in Das Reich magazine, "The Jews wanted the war, and they are getting it. But the predictions of the Führer are taking place, and we are annihilating the Jewish race in Europe." In this conflict, there is no space for pity or repentance. Frank Knox, American Secretary of the Navy, declares during a speech that the United States fleet in the Atlantic Ocean is prepared to come into action at any moment. Japanese Prime Minister Hideki Tojo assures at Parliament that the objective of renewing the diplomatic negotiations with the United States, their intention is to put an end to the economic blockade and to avoid a war. He also states his commitment to defend the honor and respect of the Japanese nation if this becomes necessary. In North Africa, in the region of Cyrenaica, Libya, 32 elite soldiers from the long-range desert group LRDG land from 2 British submarines with the mission of kidnapping Erwin Rommel. The operation fails completely and only 3 men survive. The forces of Army Group Center are 80 kilometers away from Moscow. In the south, in Rostov-on-Don, the Germans launch an attack which is counteracted by the Soviets, who begin an offensive from the north of the city. Hitler decides to establish a Reich ministry for the occupied eastern territories, headed by Nazi ideologue Alfred Rosenberg. Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, and Ukraine, which are run by the military, will now be administered by the new ministry, the Reich Kommissariat Ostland. Former flying ace Ernst Udet, who participated in the development of the Stuka and was the chief of aircraft production of the Luftwaffe, commits suicide. He was used by Göring as a scapegoat for his own mistakes, blaming him for the failure of the Battle of Britain and of the problems currently experienced by the aviation in the Eastern Front. In Vichy, France, the government denies the news that assure that a part of the ships of their fleet will be handed over to the Germans in exchange of prisoners. General Maurice Gamelin, who is being held prisoner in the Portelet fortress, is seriously ill. In Washington, Special Envoy Saburo Kurusu and the Japanese ambassador, Admiral Kishaburo Nomura, meet with Secretary of State Cordell Hull. They will later interview President Roosevelt to discuss the relations between both countries. In China, Chiang Kai-shek delivers a speech in which he asks the Western democracies that support him to launch a joint offensive against Japan to stop it from attacking Russia from the east during the German Spring Offensive. "I trust that Roosevelt and Churchill will see things as we do," he states. Operation Crusader is launched in North Africa, Churchill's third attempt to break the encirclement around Tobruk. General Claude Auchinleck, commanding the Allied troops, orders General Alan Cunningham, commander of the 8th Army, to move his armored units from Egypt towards Libya. The aim is to end the siege of Tobruk, to retrieve Cyrenaica, and to stall the advance of the Axis armies. Erwin Rommel is experiencing supply problems due to the hegemony of the British Navy in the Mediterranean Sea. In the port of Alexandria, Egypt, an Italian commando manages to attack the ships of Queen Elizabeth and the Valiant, inflicting heavy damage. RAF aircraft bomb Naples. The government of Iraq breaks diplomatic relations with France and Japan. In Venev, south of Moscow, Soviet troops coming from Siberia and equipped with skis, white camouflage uniforms, and supported by T-34 tanks attack the frozen Wehrmacht soldiers who are taken aback by the quality of the Russian gear. In the south, the Germans continue to bomb Sevastopol, Rostov and Voroshilовgrad. The British and American governments agree on setting up a joint naval base in Northern Ireland, near Londonderry. Thousands of Canadian soldiers arrive at the United Kingdom. In Tokyo, the Japanese Congress passes a resolution which expresses the hostility of their country towards the U.S.